Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. I just want to go over how we are doing our collaboration for South Carolina for emergency management, more for the aspects of responders getting that call of service at one time, not multiple different people getting calls of service, state or local or construction. They all get notified at one time. So that's pretty unique. Go ahead, Kevin, for the next slide. So I'm gonna go over the why, the how, the creation of the South Carolina group, Mike group, and how we set up the notification enrollment process. Go ahead, next slide. So part of the why is we have two big construction management projects or interstates in our downtown Columbia, capital city of South Carolina. One will be the South Carolina Midlands connection. That was a 5-year project. We're on the last year of that. That project started this whole collaboration and communication. We were widening out 16 miles of interstate. We were redoing 3 interchanges and 7 overpasses. With that deal, we had also another project was going to add into the Midlands connection that ties into the Carolina Crossroads. This is a $2.8 billion project. It changes the whole layout of our downtown going in and out of South Columbia, South Carolina, city of Columbia. Next slide. So for a Midlands connection, we had 3 separate, the 16 miles of interstate had 3 separate call centers. So if somebody had a wreck and they picked up the phone call and called 911, it might be in that call center, or it might go to that responder across that county line. By tying this in, we could all get that call of service at the same time. So we knew if it was at the 91 or the 94, we knew each one was responding. And most likely, because of Jersey barriers, we might have to go aid that agency. Then also the detours that we were having would also prolong our response. So we would also have to do some collaboration on some other agencies that say, go ahead and start this unit, because it was going to take us a lot longer to get to that location. Overcoming communication silos, a lot of people like to play in their own little sandbox. When we are having these issues where, hey, I'm here to help you, try to come to collaborate and have everybody answer that phone call or answer that radio, and they're listening. That's the key part. Because as soon as you say, hey, I'm gonna be on this channel, and when they call you and you don't call, that's done. Nobody's gonna keep going to that same channel. But if everybody's communicating on that one channel and they're getting that updated information, they'll keep using the interoperability that is set in place. Next slide. So the how. We have a system tied into our CAD. It notifies our cell phones, our MDTs. It's called Act 911. What utilized this project was they are tied into our about 480 agencies use this application. And this application is 480 times and it's tied into CADs throughout South Carolina. So that right there was a big footprint. And so if we set up a group and collaborated, we could use that application. You pay that one-time fee. Doesn't mean you got to keep paying. You just pay that one device per year. Then you can add in that multi-agency group and get notified about any interstate call of service. Next slide. So how this works is a crash comes in, the 911 center will get that call. So it'll be one or two things. Is there an injury or no injury? If there's no injury, it goes to the highway patrol and they work that wreck. But if there's an injury, then it automatically tows out our stations and then tows out the Act 911 application. In our agency, we have our units tied into that group set into that application. From there, if it hits our interstate group, say I-77, and it sees there's a call of service coming out on I-77, it forwards it to the South Carolina Communication Group, interstate group, and then whoever is needed to know that information about that interstate automatically gets forwarded that information only. Next slide. So we set out to make this group into our traffic management framework. So we have 5 zones for South Carolina. We have the Centrals, we have the Greenville, Rock Hill, Myrtle Beach, if you can see, and then the Charleston area. We went ahead and tied in communications through the major interstates that we have. And so next slide. We tied in about 5 of them. That ends up to be 753 miles of information. So if you go into that group and click 95, if you're in that TMC zone, you get notified any wreck on the interstate for 95. So if the fires get called out, EMS is getting called out. Also now the state trooper gets notified, DOT gets notified. What's the great thing about DOT is now they'll get notified as their sitter, then they start moving that camera. As me, as a responder, I'm going to look at that camera on our MDT. Oh, now they're moving that camera because they got that notification we're headed out there. Our old way of doing stuff is they had to get multiple radios and listen to multiple agencies to find out information on the interstates. This right here is a not crying wolf. You automatically get notified when it hits that zone. Next slide. So within that group, you then can, when they call that 911 center and said, hey, there's no injury in a construction zone, we really need to know about that now. In the past, we get calls to 911 and said, hey, it's no injuries. We're not setting fire. We don't care. But truly, on the interstate where we have Jersey barriers and there's no pull-offs, and then there's a secondary collision, or if we need to use the interstate for some other reason, we need to know about that additional information. So now what we have done is tied in South Carolina DOT as a non-emergency group. So you can also select I-26 or I-95 South Carolina. So it'll notify you of a crash. But as a responder, we don't need to run that call. We just know now, oh, wow, there's a wreck right out in my area on the interstate. I never would know that unless I tied into that group and get notified. The other ones are the states, interstates, and the construction zones. So you can then, for our construction people, they don't need to know about information outside of that construction zone. They only need to know about calls of service inside that construction, because we gave them a public safety radio that's only programmed for our interoperability channel to communicate when there's a wreck on the interstate. So we say, hey, here's a radio. When we get a call of service, we're going to call you on this channel. So our state communication said, hey, we'll give out this mutual aid channel for this construction for 5 years. You can only talk on this interstate group channel for 5 years. So we have now a communication right off the bat. Today, this morning, and we were sent out to an MVA, the construction worker was REOC giving us additional information. 18-wheeler jackknife no diesel fuel, everybody's out of the vehicle. All these are key points as we're responding. We need to know all lanes are shut down. Now we're going the opposite way, coming straight down to that interstate. If we didn't know that information, we would not be going that way. We would have to go all the way down and get jammed up, and then have to call another unit to come backwards down the interstate. Next slide. So I just want to go over the notification process here, how the magic works. So in a group, we in your agency, in this platform, you can add interstates, and you can keep adding each one that you want in your agency. Next slide. From there, you can also then forward it to the South Carolina light group interstate. And what it happens is, if I set up in my agency I-77, and then I tie in and say I want to forward that information to the interstate group agency, then I'm sending only that call of service to that group. So how that collaborates is a prefix, an email. You forward it, pretty much you forward that only that group to that multi-agency interstate group. Next slide. So when a call of service comes out, it'll say the unit, it'll say the construction. When it goes to the construction, then it automatically triggers the multi-interstate group and says, hey, I-26, there's a wreck. So only that fire interstate group got notified. But now anybody in the interstate group gets notified. That might be private ambulance service that travels down the interstate. That's the highway patrol. That is a lot of key people that need to know about that interstate traffic. Next slide. So in this, they have a map. So it pinpoints you where at on the map the collision takes place. Then on there, you can see people responding. I call it Skittles. So everybody has to have a color of a Skittle to know who's on what map. So we good? Oh,
yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're good here, Marcus. I did hear that too. That was sort of like
I think the slide Kevin might have lost something.
Oh,
you good, Kevin? All right. So anyway, this is the color frequency of who's traveling where, so you understand. If it's DOT, you see DOT. If you see the construction team, you know where they're at. They're all seen, and you want to see a visual, you can see it on the map itself. Next slide.
Yep. We were having some challenges with the platform a little earlier. We thought we had it fixed there.
Gotcha.
Kevin was seeing some things differently than he normally sees when he's coordinating.
Almost got to the end. So the next slide is only the paperwork that if you're an agency, if you've already got this application, you already have an administrator that will give you a device code where you can get that information. But if you're a construction worker, or if you're an agency that does not have that 911, we have a form that you have to fill out to say, hey, I want to be part of this group. If you have to sign that form and fill out some additional information, and then we'll in return send a device code, so it allows you to have access. And that's basically the premise of that. So we've been running this system for about 4 years. Now, Orangeburg, South Carolina, 95 and I-26 is starting to ramp up with their construction. So Orangeburg is being tied in, and we'll start having that collaboration in different other states that we already have it, but we're really targeting that construction zone now. So we have to, when it goes from the 91, now we have to target it to the 101. So there's always a process. There's your form that I was talking about.
Good.
That's oh yeah, I forget this slide. So all the aspect of that, we now got tied into that agency group. We've now got data on the backside. I can say for a whole year, how many wrecks, how many fires, how many calls of service, what kind of calls of service are have hit that interstate. If you're a state agency, you've got to go to each local and try to say, hey, can you send me your data? Now I'm already integrated that data together, and I can export it right off the bat. Next slide. Or I could put a call of service on a map itself, like a Google map. It shows you all the calls with no injuries, medical assist, fires, entrapments, and they're all color coded. You can zoom all the way in and see if you have a target area on a certain part of the interstate. Next slide. That's it. I wanted to keep it short, sweet, but that's the
Nice.
gist of it.